Hello, everybody. If we're broadcasting successfully, welcome to the Astronomical Society Astrophotography. Can I? This week, I'm going to be talking about my own observatory, showing you a little bit about how we decided what to do, how it was designed and built, and what have been my experiences of using it, and what if anything, I'd do differently, and what's worked well or not so well. So, as you can see, the title is Tintop Observatory. That's because it has a classic tin roof, which is obviously very much a Kiwi thing. What is the concept of the observatory? I needed an observatory in the back garden, or wanted an observatory in the back garden. It needed to fit in the space available. It was to house a newly obtained at that point EQ6 Pro mount, which is a medium-sized hobbyist mount. Pretty much 8-inch telescopes and all the relevant computers, etc., to go with it. The roof needed to be secure. I do not want any issues in high winds, etc., and easy to operate, most importantly, because I've seen a few horror stories and nightmares. It needed to be based on a permanent pillar. One of the issues I had to deal with is it's right next to the house in the main garden, so it didn't need to look like a bodged together shed. And my main thing was I wanted an instant on setup. I wanted to walk outside, press a couple of buttons, move the roof, and be ready to go. So what did we decide to do? We decided to go for a slide-off roof because it's cheap. We looked at a few other options. They're much more expensive, a dome, etc. A flip-over roof is too complicated and too heavy. You rely on counterweights and things to stop it crashing to the ground. A dome would have been lovely, but I didn't have that kind of budget. An up-slide-off roof is cheap, low technical detail. In this case, I thought I could make it low maintenance and make it weatherproof quite easily. The pillar, I decided I was going to concrete it into the ground. I looked at various possibilities for the pillar. Eventually, I settled on a wooden house pile set in concrete. Now, a lot of people will immediately have a bit of a heart attack at the idea of a wooden pillar, but we'll see later about how it would work. I was concerned about the pillar being stable, but it's cheap. It was very hard to find what I wanted in terms of concrete. Very easy to fit, easy to fix things too. You can screw things into wood. And another point, it's pretty easy to take it out and replace it. If I want to cut it off and build a concrete pillar on the same base, wouldn't be a problem. As far as the actual observatory building itself is concerned, I decided to build this essentially as if I was building a small cabin or office. So it was framed with normal framing timber, clad on the outside with shiplap walls made out of fence paneling and painted, and lined inside with hardboard to keep it clean, help keep the dust and cobwebs down. I then we decided to do something a little unusual for an observatory, which is that most of the walls of the observatory, or a large part, are windows. A couple of reasons for that. One is, again, it's cheap. Windows cost me nothing. They were being pulled out of old villas. It looks good in the garden, and they're very strong structurally. So the windows and door are glass windows and doors. Now, this caused me to have some concerns about light and heat above everything, I think, which were that, is it going to get so hot in there it's going to damage things? Is it going to get, too much light? Are you going to have problems? Well, I don't do astronomy in the daytime, so I'm not too worried about light. Heat was an issue. But it's got windows I can open, which make ventilation very easy during the day, etc. And it looks nice. So here is the building. As you can see, it looks a bit more like I was building a summer house than I was building an observatory, perhaps, which was the intention. The picture I took while I was in the middle of painting it. The floor, I decided would make a pad first, a platform of lead aggregates in a frame. So it's basically a free draining terrace, effectively. There's a floating wooden floor frame sitting on that, which doesn't touch the pillar, and then a floor of wooden planks sitting on the frame with liftable access panels. One of the reasons I did what I did rather than just building a wooden floor on lakes or whatever was that I wouldn't have been able to start the observatory for probably another year, and I wanted an outdoor observing platform on a slope site. So this gave me a really good platform to use before the observatory was built. It provides fantastic drainage. Rains as much as it wants and water just goes away underneath. Because essentially you've got concrete set into the ground surrounded by multiple tons of aggregate, it helps it to be very stable against vibration. And I was able to put in good cable access. Here's a little look at the stuff that happened during building. In the middle, you can see the actual platform being built. I got all carried away taking pictures. You can see the layers of aggregate being built up. You can see the plastic buckets that are set into it. That goes down 2 large buckets deep, so it's probably about 800 millimeters below the ground. That goes down as effectively a tube. At the left, you can see how we set the piling in it, filling that entire thing with concrete. So the piling is set in a 500 wide by 800 deep concrete block into the ground. On the right hand side, you can see it being used as a strongly platform prior to building the shed on, and I had a handrail there because it was pretty dangerous otherwise at night. So yeah, that's the pre-build, and that's the platform. We then, after building the observatory, then put the floor in. So I've got pictures of the floor there, which show you the removable access panel. There's a couple of them. I can just lift those boards up and get underneath. And as you can see, where the frame doesn't actually go very close to the concrete block, and the boards just cantilever over it and provide a floor. That's been fantastic. Absolutely great. No vibration of any kind while walking around. I can walk in and out of the observatory and I don't need to worry about it vibrating a camera or anything like that. Materials for the roof. The roof is a lightweight wooden frame designed to be pretty stiff. It has roofing steel on it with steel edges, which also provide stiffness in various directions. The weatherproofing has been 100%. I haven't had any water incursion whatsoever. I had water incursion on one occasion, which had nothing to do with the roof, which I'll mention a bit later. The roof's pretty light. It was cheap because it turns out, you may have noticed a fashion in the last few years for putting metal cladding on buildings, like houses. You see a lot of house developments where there's metal walls. Well, the builders make a lot of mistakes. They put cladding up, then they take it off again, and they can't use it again. It has a few little holes in from screws, but it's sitting in a pile and it's destined for the skip. So I was able to scrounge some black roof panels, which were really great. We fitted them to the roof, put silicon bungs in the couple of screw holes, and it looks like I went out and spent, quite a lot of money on roofing steel. It looks pretty good as well. As you see from, if I go back to the picture of the building, you can see the roof looks pretty pro and drains all that slope, just drains all the water away and falls off the edge into the plants underneath. So the roof as a roof has been very good. The mechanism now, we had a lot of thoughts and a few experiments regarding the sliding mechanism. I decided to base it on a pergola with an aluminium channel on top, obviously twice the length of the observatory to allow you to roll the roof the whole way off. I obtained the aluminium channels from an aluminium extrusion wholesaler very cheaply, and they were quite solid and a good size. The pergola, as you can see, is partially cantilevered. If you look again at the pergola here, the poles are halfway along, and you've got a cantilever there. It means you haven't got poles sticking out all the way into the garden. That's proved to be completely stable without any difficulties as well. I think the aluminium channels overcome any warping in the timber. The area that was probably most carefully designed here is the area of closing. When you slide the roof back, you can see here on the main picture to the right here, that's the observatory roof off. As you see, the wall at the front of the observatory here, the higher side, is actually stays in place and the roof slides around it. In the left-hand picture, you can see to the left side a little strip of metal. That's kind of how it fits together. The middle picture on here is better for that. You can see the overhanging metal just slides over the frame and forms an overhang on the outside when it's closed. That's been very, very good. On the other end, there's an air gap permanently at the end, which it slides towards, which is proved very useful because it means it never gets really hot in there. You've got a wide air gap at the top, and that side has a substantial overhang even when it's closed. There's rubber block end stops placed in the channels. You can see the clamp downs that are designed for trailers, etc., which when the roof closed, I can just drop those down. Those are proved again to be fantastic. We've had a couple of decent storms through and it hasn't moved an inch, showing any sign of it. So that's pretty good. Why is this successful? The main reason is I needed it to be operated in the dark. Ideally, you should be able to get hold of it with one hand and slide it closed, and you can. This comes really from the wheels. So I've got we did several iterations trying wheels. We tried some smaller rollers, which seemed logical, but we found that they snag in the channels and are very hard to drag. I then obtained some fairly large, as you can see in the pictures, the wheels are actually quite large casters. I had them slightly modified by the people who make them at Rex Industrial, who made them with a bit lower profile of the actual bracket for me. Those wheels, because they're so large, are low friction for dragging. It proves to be extremely easy to move the roof. I can walk in there in pitch black, flip the catches and slide the roof open with one hand and then slide it closed with one hand again. It's never been a problem. You'll notice that the axle of the wheel is above the channel, which means there's no possibility of snagging. As it slides down the channel, it just stays true. My recommendation would be for wheels for an observatory, these have been 100%. Only snag I had with the roof, full stop, has been two things really. One is it's really important to put drain holes in the sides of these channels because they fill up with water. Turns out even just the end stops, rubber end stops, are enough to allow a little bit of water to build up, and on one occasion some water spilled over the channel down the wall, which was rather annoying. So I drilled some largish holes in the side of the channel and outside, and now the water drains away. The other thing I've had with the design is that this area, you can see in the little picture with the down piece of steel coming down, over time there's a very, very, very small, small enough that you can't see it, drop in the center of the roof, which causes that to rub on the top of the wood when you're closing it. I've literally just bent the metal over a little bit and that solved that problem. But yeah, there's a limit to how stiff you can make a roof with a light wooden frame. Okay, if anyone's got any questions, by the way, do ask, or comments or criticisms of my design. I'm more than happy to hear it. So what about the setup inside? The telescope mount is mounted to the top of the pillar. I've got a mounting extender for the telescope mount, which has a bottom plate which is screwed into the pillar using coach screws, which I could confidently hang half a ton off it would never move. And then the telescope mount extender slots onto there, which we can see in some of the pictures here. You can see here the black tube. That slot's on there, held on with 3 screws, which gives you adjustment if you need it. Once it's in place, it hasn't shown any inclination towards moving, which is nice. Cables run straight down the pillar under the floor, i.e. to the computer. The computer is on a wall-mounted station, as you see here. I built a little station onto the wall there with a canvas sort of shade that goes over the whole thing. That's been fairly successful. Power and Ethernet, I don't know if we can see it on the picture, you can't really. Over to the right of the computer, there's a conduit coming up through the floor, which runs under the floor, under the paths, into my garage, and brings all the power and Ethernet through the conduit. Robert, I would say I did worry about that, but my experience has been that the kind of wind in which I would ever operate an observatory has not even caused a ripple of movement. I'm not in the most exposed place in the world. We're in a location that's fairly sheltered, but I've never operated it when it's very windy, and the kind of winds that you could begin to operate a telescope in, I've never found that it caused me a problem with any kind of movement. It's heavy enough. I think the advantage of the big wheels is that the roof doesn't have to be that light. It's with all that roofing steel, there's a fair bit of weight on there. It just doesn't feel like it when you're moving it because of the relatively low friction. Right, experiences. How's it been? So the roof, I couldn't ask for it to be better. It works almost exactly as it did on day one. I say I had the slight issue with the metal rubbing, but that was fixed. If I could go out there now, I went out there today to open it to check everything out and to take a couple of photographs, and I was able to just unlatch the roof and slide it off. Clamp downs have been very good. I obtained those from a sort of general hardware place who sells stuff for workshops. They're sort of over clamps. Those seem to be a bit of a genius thing because they pull down on the roof onto the wheels, so they kind of stop everything dead. I haven't had any issues with damp in there, which was my main concern with having glass windows. Was with humidity and heat, you would get too hot, you'd get mold. I haven't had any mold in there at all. I think the reason for that is mainly that the gap at the roof level causes any successive heat to vent out through there, and I am in the habit of leaving the door open in really good weather to let it keep vented. One problem with leaving the door open is the neighborhood cats do have a tendency to think it's a marvelous place to go in and lie around in the sun and use it as a little sunroom. So I've had a couple of cases where there were feathers in there, where they decided to have their lunch, so that wasn't so great, but that's been pretty good. I should put some blinds on the windows, pull down blinds really, though, just so that I can actually close it off. The pillar was my main concern, I think, with the design. I haven't really seen anyone using a wooden pillar, and I thought, well, maybe it's going to be a disaster and I'll feel like a fool. But in actual fact, the pillar has been, on the whole, very, very good. As far as stability when in use is concerned, with telescope slewing or with people walking around, I haven't seen any effect on the pillar moving at all. Certainly not when I'm doing planetary stuff, which means on a Barlow, fully zoomed in, and I can walk in and out of there without causing any vibration in the image, which is bad. Over the years, there's a slight drift in alignment, so it does need to be aligned periodically. Well, probably the wooden pillar warping very slightly. I mean, it's a pretty solid lump of wood, but it's not warped so you could see it. But you know, every few months, every couple of months, I've had to just tweak the alignment, which I put down to the fact, in the end, all wood warps. Cabling under the floor has been good, but I should greatly improve the cabling on the actual telescope. At the moment, it's pretty much hanging down there, and I've got the power and USB hanging on the sides. It looks a bit amateur hour. I should put some conduits down the outside of the pillar. A little embarrassing. I added a wooden platform, which you can see, to the pillar at the top, which is just wooden platform stuck onto nailed onto the side of the pillar. That's actually been incredibly useful when you're working on something on the telescope. You've got somewhere to put things. Currently, the reason why on this picture there's no storage as such you can see is because I took out the storage I had in there, which was around those two walls you can see there, and I'm building some new storage in there. I'm having a new workshop up the garden for other stuff, which will be a long-term storage, but the day-to-day things you need while you're working on the telescope, I need some smaller cupboards to fit in there, which I'm currently building. Main reason for building proper cupboards is going to keep dust out. So what are the problems? Dust. It does get dusty, and if you get a lot of cobwebs and leaves blowing in there, etc. So that's a bit of a pain. I have to go and regularly brush all the cobwebs out and clear the leaves up. Insects have probably been the thing that's given me the most real problem. I had a problem with a laptop that was in there, got infested with ants because there's some warmth there, and insects are drawn to warm, dark places. If I go in there and pick the keyboard up, I occasionally have to send a cockroach on his way before I can start using it, that kind of thing. If it's been a hot day, then obviously the roof needs to be opened up and cooled, which I think is probably true for all observatories. Do I have to polar align? Apart from the fact that every few months I polar align for the mount, no. Now, once it's up and running, I don't. If I go out there to use it, I don't have to touch the alignment. It's stable enough that it will last from session to session. Over a year, I would do a couple of polar alignments, I think. Mostly me, but a lot of that's me taking the equipment off to mess around or for something, and then of course I have to polar align. So it kind of goes together. Measurements, it's I believe 2.1 by 2.8, I think, meters, the floor plan, and the height is just over 2, and the wall height is just over 2, because I can walk. It's got a normal sized door in the front, as you can see from the pictures. Where have I got a picture that shows a door? You can see the front door of the observatory is a completely normal house door. So it's a house door plus a bit of extra height, so for the wall height. So I guess 2 meters probably to the top of the frame. When you're inside with the roof on, you got a bit more room because the roof has a height of its own. It says with the angle. Okay, so what have we got? Space is rather limited. It is a small observatory. That's not because of the cost or difficulty. It's just because I had the space available to put it in, based on where buildings and paths and other things in the garden are. So I was stuck. I couldn't go any bigger in either direction, really. I could have gone a bit further down the slope, but then of course you're dealing with more and more slope. So space is a little limited. The roof sliding type roof. You'll notice. Notice the telescope position that it's in this photograph. That is my park position. It has to be like that because, especially with a guide scope, if I have a guide scope on, the roof wouldn't close in the traditional park position. So it has to be canted over to the side to lower it. It's never been a problem because I've set that as my standard park anyway, so I can't make a mistake about where it needs to be. But it is a compromise. You can't park the telescope away in its polar position. There's my scope, there's my computer. My computer is my old home computer that I replaced. I then put that out there. I do have some problems with that. Computers don't seem to stand up entirely well to being in a shed type environment. I've had various failures in the hardware that I've had to replace. Could just be the hardware being crappy, but I think it's probably the temperature changes are more extreme than they are inside a house. So I'm thinking of replacing it with a NIC or something that doesn't have any moving parts and is more stable and reliable. Maybe I could put inside a container of some kind and some kind of enclosure to keep the temperature stable. really. Craig mentions the surface spray. I have done that and it does work, absolutely. I just forgot a couple of times to do it on the observatory when I was doing it on the house and suffered for all that. But yeah, insect surface spray is wonderful stuff, and you just spray around all the portals. Then they get it. I mean, it doesn't last forever, but yes, that's a really good idea. So yeah, computer side of things, I really to improve. I probably should get a proper little workstation with no moving parts. I don't use that computer for planetary captures, mainly because in order to be able to capture full speed wherever the telescope's pointing, the USB 3 cables don't like to be too long, and it's just a faff. So I use the computer for telescope control and also for capture of deep sky stuff where performance isn't the issue. When I'm capturing, if you see the little blue planetary camera there, that is a that's a USB 3 camera, and the frame rate is fantastic, but you've got to be in a USB 3 port, not sharing with anything else, and you've got to be on a proper cable that's not too long. Robert, I do operate the telescope from indoors. Once I'm up and running, one of the advantages of having the Ethernet straight to it is I come back inside, sit at my desk and use it. I haven't set up an actual warning station for rain, partly because when I'm inside operating, I'm next to a window anyway. So I've never had a problem seeing it coming. But it's one of those little projects you keep going, I've really got to set up a rain sensor. I had a weather station, but it died and I haven't replaced it yet. So just a weather station with a rain warning on it would probably be a good idea. We had a guy demonstrating the design for one at some point, didn't we? So I should do that. So a good point to raise. It's one of the things that's weaker is I don't have a formal system warning me. If I forgot everything and then it rained, it could get wet. So what can I offer in the way of advice, I suppose? It's very much set up for imaging. If I was going to do a lot of let's see, if we look at this picture here, if I was going to do a lot of actual observing, there wouldn't be enough room. The shorter of the two dimensions is probably a bit short. I should probably have made it square and accepted that I had a bigger roof to deal with, because it can be a bit cramped going round and round the mount to do things. Other possible changes, I might have made the walls a little higher, but then you have a compromise with the wall height of how low you can bring the telescope down before you get in the way. So that's a decision that's been made, I suppose. The wooden pillar, it works. Would I do it again? Yes, I think I probably would, but eventually I'll probably replace it with a concrete pillar when I feel like it, going for a luxury option. If I ever get a bigger telescope, I'll definitely go with a concrete pillar. Craig, are you powered USB hub? I have a powered USB hub there, which I use for everything else, and it resolves all the problems I had, except for getting 100 frames a second out of USB 3 planetary camera, which I've never achieved through a hub at all. It works, but the frame rate's not as good. So I've never been able to get it to do USB 3 full speed through the hub. I wish I could. If I could get it working, that would be great, because then I could use the very powerful computer that's sitting there, which is more than able to do it. The biggest tip for the computer, of course, is, I guess you know, is a SSD drive, a nice big SSD drive in there to do the captures if you're doing planetary work. Other items, I'm very happy with the Windows aspect, which surprised me, having Windows for all the walls. I was dubious. I thought I may be making a mistake, but I haven't found that to be bad at all. Main thing is plenty of ventilation. I think the windows help with the light coming in. It stops it getting musty, which I know can be a problem in winter with things like observatories. The mounting of the telescope itself, the mount, yeah, it's a little, it's not been a bad mount. I need to upgrade the mount. You can see it's got if you look at the mount, you'll see those little flippy adjusters for the altitude on the mount. They're horrific, so that's an upgrade to do. This year, I'm planning some fairly major work on the whole thing to improve everything for deep sky imaging, which means sorting out those little issues with the mount, which help make alignment awkward. Getting the focusing on the telescope sorted out. I've got the rather excellent schema for a focuser, which I've got all the parts for an electronic temperature compensating focuser. I've got a Crayford focuser to use it on, to go on the back of this C8. So generally, I'm moving things on. As far as the group goes, this year I'm planning some bit more organised this year, because this last year was a bit of a mess. Last year due to COVID, I think, but also due to me. I'm going to be getting a better camera at some point, and I'll be taking the group along on that journey. You mean? So yeah. But yeah, I agree with Robert there. If I do get a mini PC, I won't use it for planetary capture. I just don't think they're up to the job. I would use it for telescope control and imaging for the deep sky capture, which I'm assuming it'd be perfectly adequate for. My experience of planetary capture is it's the thing, that and computer games are the two things that kill your hardware. Planetary capture you need a SSD, USB 3, tons of free space, nothing else running on the laptop to get the absolute maximum frame rate, because it's all about frame rate. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I think a mini PC makes a lot of sense in terms of organising the space better. Oh, the other thing I found in Observatory is that monitors don't really like to live outside. I had the first one died, and this one's looking a little squirrely, so I may have to look at encasing the monitor in something again. I think it gets a bit warm in there, so that might be a weakness of the design. So I may need to add a cooling of some kind around the computer station. So yeah, that's my observatory, which has been a great pleasure. I have to say, the pleasure of being able to go outside if it's a nice night and have it up and imaging in no more than 10 minutes, 5 minutes really, if it's planetary. A bit longer if it's deep sky, but there's no real hold up to getting on with the imaging. So that's fantastic. That's actually a really good idea, Craig. Thank you. Solar powered vent. I hadn't thought of it, and I really should. That would probably be a really good idea, because that would cool it. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with mold or anything, because there is air circulation, but that would really pump the air actively out when it gets hot. So I will have a look at one of those. Thank you. It's a really good tip. Is there anything else about using Observatory that I haven't covered? I think well-designed storage would be the biggest upgrade. I think when you want a bit, you want one of your adapters or a eyepiece, or just to change something over, or filters, and you need them to be to hand. You need them to be completely stay clean. I think dust and cobwebs and things are probably the biggest problem I have in terms of functional things. I have to really remember not to leave things lying around in there, because they'll get pretty dirty pretty quickly. So I'm going to put some cupboards in that close with a dust seal on them, that I can keep all those bits in. So that should make a big difference. All right, well, that didn't take long, 35 minutes. So it was a little shorter than I perhaps planned. I obviously talked too fast. If anyone got any more questions, one of the things I would like you to do, if possible, is on the Facebook page, if you've got subjects you'd like either me to cover or me to find somebody to cover for the group, please do let me know on the Facebook group, so that I can try and organise it. I'd love to do some more practical sessions. We had great fun when I brought the telescope along. We set it up at the Star Dome and did some imaging. It'd be nice to do that again. I'm going to be doing some actual skyscape imaging, starscape imaging with a wide angle lens and stuff this year. So maybe we could possibly arrange for a few of us to go together to some of the nice spots that are around the fringes of Auckland, where it's nice and dark. Out at the beaches out west is always good fun. So yeah, hopefully this year we can have a good year, and we can very soon be back at the Star Dome together having these chats in person. So yeah, if there's no more questions or comments at this point, please feel free to catch up at any time on Facebook or message me, and I'll look forward to talking to you all again. So thank you very much, and what have we got? When it gets darker, really, a live astronomy imaging session. One of the things I'd really like to do, and doing these sessions on Teams makes it seem like a really good idea, is have some sessions at home where I can set up the camera in my observatory at night and actually do a live session with you guys connected, telling me what, talking about what to do and taking suggestions and seeing the output. Yeah, Craig, if you mean the like tool cases where you get the closed heavy duty tool case with the foam, I use those. Yeah, those are great. But in the observatory, I'd like to have kind of a cupboard as well that I can leave things in. I've even found the cases in the observatory get dirty on the outside, and then it's just a bit messy. So, yeah. For moving stuff around, though, those cases are a godsend. I keep all my equipment in them. I only wish I could get one big enough for my actual C8 tube to go in and the mount to go in, but they have to manage for those with a bag. Oh, hi there. Watching from London, England. Geez, okay. Well, first thing in the morning over there. Thank you for watching. Obviously, the things are a little different over there, a different time of year. I miss a few things from the sky up there, but we have so much in the sky down here that's unique that I don't miss it too much. Obviously, you can guess I'm from England. The pillar, yes, the pillar is 125 by 125. It's adequate, which was really all I needed to be for my relatively modest equipment. I've seen a few people here doing block pillars, somebody doing the breeze block type pillar. I'm not sure whether that would be an upgrade or whether I'd be better off pouring a poured concrete tube is what I considered. I also looked at metal ones, but that seems just like throwing money down a hole for something that's going to ring like a bell if you knock it by accident. So the wood seems to work quite well. It's quite damping, I think, in terms of noise. Yeah, so okay, I think I'll call it a day there because it gives you guys time to transfer over to the practical astronomy with Bill, which is 8 o'clock. So hopefully everybody will tune in and see what Bill's got to say this evening. Excellent, Mark. We'll definitely do that then. I think actual sessions doing astronomy are probably what people like most. It'd be great doing stuff together, but also just running a session from here. All right, well, thank you very much, guys, for coming. It's great to see some people turning up, and I know quite a few people watch these things later on YouTube as well. So thanks a lot, and next month I'll try and have something really interesting for everybody to either participate in or watch. Thanks a lot.